I would want humans to learn how to live sustainably on this planet.
Welcome to Nature Magic. Today I'm talking to Nikita Zimov, director of Pleistocene Park. Nikita is a Russian scientist at the cutting edge of the fight against climate change. Nikita and his father Sergey have been resurrecting an ice age biome since 1998. Pleistocene Park is a major initiative that includes an attempt to restore the mammoth steppe ecosystem, which was dominant in the Arctic in the late Pleistocene era. The initiative requires replacement of the current unproductive northern ecosystems by highly productive pastures, which have both a high animal density and a high rate of biocycling. Biocycling is the cycle through which energy and essential substances are transferred among species. Grazing ecosystems in the Arctic promote climate cooling through a series of ecological effects. Experiments with animal reintroductions were begun in 1988, including 8 major herbivore species: reindeer, Yakutian horse, moose, bison, musk ox, yak, Kalmykian cow, and sheep. It will soon hopefully welcome the genetically cloned woolly mammoth that is predicted to be born in the next 6 years. This project has the capacity to spread across the Arctic region and reduce worldwide carbon emissions by up to 20%. We have much to thank these tough, resilient scientists who started and have been running Pleistocene Park with no recognition until very recently. Suddenly, everyone's heads are turned in their direction, and the world is looking at their important work and their life's quest to save this planet. Hi, Nikita. It's very, very exciting to talk to you today. I was Googling on Google Maps to see where you were, because Pleistocene Park is up in the north east of Russia, and you said you were going to be near Smolensk with a herd of bison, which seems to be a long way west. So can you tell us what you're doing with a herd of bison at the moment?
Well, I think you're a bit out of date. I was with herd of bison near Smolensk in second part of July.
Okay.
And we were transporting them from Denmark. In Smolensk, that's the border of Russia, and we changed the truck at the border, and we drove to Arkhangelsk. Arkhangelsk, it's a seaport in the White Sea, which is at the Arctic coast. And from there, the bison were traveling along the northern route, so through the Arctic Ocean, all the way to the Pleistocene Park in the northeastern part of Russia. And it took them like 3 weeks in the sea. And now all the bison are released for about a month. They're already in the park, so they were released on September 9th. And well, let's say they're working on restoring the high productive grazing ecosystems.
Brilliant. Did you have bison there before, or is this the first herd of bison?
No, that's our already second herd, which we're introducing. We were buying the same bison from same farm in Denmark in 2019, and they did quite well. And the first herd showed that in the Arctic, bison can live on their own without any support from humans and can even reproduce, so they already have babies. And we now will be looking for every opportunity to bring more bison to the Pleistocene Park.
Okay, so we better backpedal for the listeners so that you can explain what the Pleistocene Park is, how you got involved. Can you tell the listeners the concept of the park, which is so fascinating?
Yes, sure. So Pleistocene Park, it's a scientific project which goal is to restore high productive grazing ecosystems in the Arctic. And we say that these ecosystems will allow us to mitigate climate change. So that's briefly. The project was founded by my father, Sergey Zimov, back in 1996. It was official start of the company, but the idea first appeared and first experiments started back in 80s, still in the Soviet Union. So what's the idea behind that? just 15,000 years ago, the modern Arctic looked totally different than it looks now. Back then, on those pretty much never-ending pastures, lived millions of animals. So bison, horses, mammoth, reindeers, lions, wolves. So the ecosystem looked pretty much like Serengeti look now. So that's how it was. Then the climate changed. First humans appeared, and with overhunting, they quickly broke, let's say, the balance in the nature. So in the Arctic, grasses and herbs cannot compete against other vegetation without help of animals. So if there is no animals which trample down mosses, lichen, small trees, this vegetation slowly taking over. And what humans did, they dropped down number of animals. Some animals maybe even dropped extinct entirely, and they kept the number of animals low for extended periods of time. And the pastures degraded. And now modern Arctic look very different than it used to be 15,000 years ago. So now there is very, very few animals. The ecosystems are super low productive. Everything's growing extremely slowly in the Arctic. And the only animals which live in this ecosystem in abundance are mosquitoes. And what we say that we can do the reverse shift. If in the past, humans managed to destroy this ecosystem by reducing number of animals and keeping it low for extended period of time, we'll do the opposite. We'll artificially increase number of animals and make sure they adapt into environment, and we artificially maintain their living, so we provide forage. And the animals, by grazing, they are once again allowing grasses and herbs to be dominating vegetation. So if there is intensive grazing, let's say seedlings of trees cannot establish. Mosses and lichens are again physically trampled. And slowly grasses and herbs taking over, and the productivity of ecosystem increase, fertility of soils increase, and the pastures are formed. So animals, the more they graze, the better is the pastures. So there is, of course, some complication that you need to shepherd animals, make sure there is no overgrazing, so there is even grazing effect everywhere. And in the wild ecosystems, that was always done by predators, and we really hope to have predators in our Pleistocene Park as well at some point. So that's the goal. And the reason why we're doing that, as I already said, that we argue that these ecosystems can allow us to mitigate climate change. And there is 4 main phenomena why we say these ecosystems are better than what we have right now. So the first thing, and the most kind of direct effect, is albedo effect. Albedo is pretty much reflectance of the surface. The light is the surface, the white is the surface. The higher portion of energy, solar energy, it reflects back to space. So staying cold. For example, in every city, if you touch dark asphalt, it will be hot. If you touch a white car, it will be kind of cold. So same with ecosystems. The lighter the ecosystem, the colder it is.
Okay, that's very interesting. And when I'm looking in Google Maps now around the park, I can see there seems to be a lot of lakes as well and rivers in that landscape. Is that what I'm seeing? I can see lots of round, or maybe they're little forestry.
Yes, there is lots of lakes. More, I think, if you look at Google, if you look at satellite imagery, I think satellite imagery around park was taken, I think, somewhere in 2018 during the flood time. So the lakes seem actually bigger than they are. But
I get it.
Overall, yes. In our region, there is millions of lakes.
The first point to mitigate climate change was increasing the reflection, the solar reflection. What's the second one? Because I interrupted you there.
Yes. So, well, with the first one, it's also the problem not only about, it's about reflectance, but also the timing. So in the summer, reflectance, so grasses are light green, forests are dark green, but it's all shades of green. But if you come in our region in April/May, everything will still be covered with snow, but the sun will be extremely dense. So you cannot walk in our region outside all day without sunglasses. You will burn your eyes. And so the sun is extremely high. It's already polar day at that time there. But the grasslands are covered with snow and they are white. And the stems of trees are dark. So they don't have any leaves. Large trees don't have any leaves or needles at that time. And they're just very, very dark. And they're getting heated by the sun a lot. And during this couple months a year, there is extreme change in how much energy is absorbed by ecosystems. So that's quite important. Second, and most kind of picked up by perception of people and media, Arctic is getting warmer 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the world. And the problem that in the Arctic is located what's so-called permafrost. It's a ground underneath our feet, which has been frozen for tens of thousands of years. And let's say sad reality that this permafrost contains more carbon than in our entire atmosphere. So all CO2 in the atmosphere contains less carbon than the organic matter in the permafrost. And if permafrost is warm, so if climate is getting warmer, permafrost is getting warmer too. And if permafrost will start thawing, it will start emitting greenhouse gases. And there is, estimates vary. But in any case, it will be probably the biggest natural source of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. And it will be, I think the mildest projections are like 20% of all anthropogenic emissions. So degrading permafrost will add, let's say, another United States emitter. And that's the mildest projection. Some projections say it will be comparable with anthropogenic emissions for several decades. So that's kind of a very big deal. Mm-hmm. And if there is a way to keep permafrost colder, those ways should be applied. And I will give you some numbers just for understanding. So when I was a kid, temperature of air outside was minus 11 centigrade, so 30 years ago. At the same time, temperature of permafrost was minus 6 centigrade. Now the climate got warmer, and now the temperature of air is only minus 8. So our region warmed by 3 degrees in 3 decades. And the same trend was with permafrost. So it was minus 6, now it's minus 3. So there is this, but also note there is this 5-degree gap. So temperature of permafrost is 5 degrees warmer than temperature of air. And the reason for that is that in the summer heat is penetrating to the ground and down to the permafrost without any barriers. And when in the winter the ground is supposed to lose its heat, the snow is forming on the surface. The snow is acting as the insulator. And that's why the soil cannot release the heat. If, for example, there would be, for several years, there would be no snow at all falling down, the temperature of permafrost will drop down to minus 8 and it will be very stable.
Okay, so is that, so to increase the grassland, would the snow retract?
No, it's not about grasses. It's about, it's just a physical property. If we need to get permafrost colder to make sure it will not degrade. So that's the issue. And if you remove the snow, you will get permafrost colder. And the question is, how can you remove the snow? Taking bulldozers and plowing the snow all winter long in the Arctic seems like a debatable method. Let's put it this way. And at the same time, there is one friendly method. If underneath the snow, you have something tasty for animals, and if you have animals, these animals will come there, they will dig through the snow looking for food. And they will trample down and compact the snow. And compacted snow is much worse heat insulator. So instead of half meter of thin, kind of soft snow, you have 5 to 10 centimeters of very dense snow. And at that, soil lose most of its heat insulating abilities and ground freeze much deeper. So you can realistically have 2 to 3 degrees cooling of permafrost if you have grasslands and if you have animals. And
wow, that seems like a very, very strong solution for that.
Yeah, it's not that easy, honestly saying. You need to have something tasty underneath the snow.
Okay.
And you need to establish already good grasses. And then this effect will work. So it takes time. So that's a complex problem. So it's not that easy.
Yeah.
But, we need to to do that anyway. Third effect. if you talk about natural-based solutions to climate change, there is pretty much two things which any person in the world will say. So first one is we need to reduce our carbon footprint. So we need to drive less cars. We need to go to kind of more efficient kind of industries, etc., etc., etc. And that's true. And the second option, which you will say, how can we fight climate change? Everybody will say we need to plant trees. It's a kind of the most common and broad perception. And in some places in the world, that indeed makes sense. For example, in the tropics, somewhere in California, where the climate is super warm, it's moist, and the trees are growing huge there, and they're growing very fast. And also decomposition in these ecosystems is very high, so the only place where you can store lots of carbon is actually only in the stem of trees. And the Arctic is not like that. You can, of course, plant trees, but the trees are small, sparse, and it takes centuries for them to grow. In our region, where we are located, trees can store only about 2 kilograms of carbon per square meter in the forms of stems. So that's not much. And also, I don't know if you've been following the news, but our local state of Yakutia been the world recordsman in terms of forest fires this season.
Oh, I didn't know it was the world record. That's not a good record.
Yeah, that was kind of pretty much huge territories of forest in our local state burned down. So with climate change, it's getting much drier, and it's pretty much impossible to stop them. It's so very remote. There is no people. There is no roads. So it's for those fires are impossible to get to. So it's kind of a disaster. And you can plant trees there, but they will not consume much carbon. And every once in a while, any lightning or guy with matches, and it's all gone. However, in the Arctic, what we have very cold soils. And in our soils, in our ground, decomposition is extremely slow. And imagine if you have some organic matter which will be buried down in the ground, it will stay there for centuries, if not millennia. And what's the situation now? Now we have very low productive vegetation. Mosses and lichens don't have any trees or roots. Large trees don't have any deep roots, so all the roots are along the surface. And pretty much all the carbon in the soil right now in the modern ecosystems is allocated in the top 20 centimeters. And what's happening if instead of low productive vegetation, which doesn't need much water, which doesn't grow fast, we will start growing vegetation, which is very rapidly growing. And if it's rapidly growing, it needs lots of water. What this vegetation will do? It will start growing deep roots. And what is deep roots? So it is CO2 in the atmosphere, which got picked up with photosynthesis, so this greenhouse gas, and convert into organic matter and buried down to 1 meter depth in the cold Arctic soils. And at that, even the small input of carbon roots, and it will not be small, it will be actually all right, will lead to creation of a huge storage of carbon. So as I said, if in the above ground, in the forms of stems of trees in the Arctic, we can store up to 2 kilograms of carbon per square meter, maybe someplace a bit more, but just a little bit. Then if you create a rich soil, and with grass and herbs, we can do that. It will take some time, but I think we can reach up to 100 kilograms of carbon per square meter. So Arctic soils, it's a place which is actually now quite depleted in carbon, but if you get proper ecosystems there, the huge Arctic territories can become a huge storage of carbon.
Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic solution as well. And the ambition is to expand the park as much as possible eventually. And, if this argument is so logical, it's very easy to explain to people. And when things really hit crisis, perhaps a simple argument like that might change, people's minds across different countries.
I think slowly we're getting there. It's in terms of perception of the park and park ideas, I think we are in quite a breakthrough in the recent years. So I don't know, let's say maybe 10 years ago, people were saying those two crazy Russian scientists. 20 years ago, people might throw a rotten tomato at us. And maybe And 50 years ago, for our theory, we could have been sentenced to death.
Well, I'm sorry about all that.
Yeah,
it's getting better.
But right now there is, people start to understand that what we propose makes sense, and there is actually big support in the scientific community and the public community, and even the authorities and in our local state and also in Russia is actually starting to listen to those ideas. And here it's an easy solution. It's a win-win situation, because in many other places in the world, you cannot do big restoration projects in the wildlife or in the nature, because everywhere is farms, it's private land, someone lives there, there is business, and somebody is making profit out of the land. And in the modern Arctic, there is not much profit can be theoretically obtained. So all the industries, minings are located in one kind of remote corners. And what we propose to do will not harm them in any way.
Mm-hmm. It sounds it sounds absolutely ideal, and you've got all the experience from 1996 to back up the scientific arguments. So it was worth a few rotten tomatoes along the way. So well done.
No, it's since we've been living on the Kolma. It's above the Arctic Circle in the far east of northeast of Russia. It's not that many people who can throw tomatoes that far. So
it's true, but you've had to stick it out. And I was investigating a little bit, listening to your documentary that was done a while ago, and you were quite enjoying the city life, and your father persuaded you to come back and work on this project. At the time, were you interested in the solutions for climate change?
So our main job is it's kind of place of job where we work is called Northeast Scientific Station. So that's a research station which was founded by my father back in 1980, and it's now one of the largest Arctic research stations in the world, and it's pretty much private owned, and we are the owners, and that's our main work. And park is, let's say, was one of the experiments in the park, in the research station. And it was pretty much for many, many years, it was, I think most correctly, it would be called our hobby, because we never received funding for that, and we just did it for our own interest. And when he was inviting me when I was still in university to return back to the station, he was, let's say, offering me a position at the research station. And also the park was already a big thing there at that time. And I generally liked it in the Arctic. It's a place where I grew up. It's a wild nature. And I enjoy living there. So, and I was understanding and thinking that what my dad is doing is important and it's got potential to grow. And that's why I accepted his invitation to go back to the Arctic.
Well, we're glad you did. So we hadn't got to the fourth effect because I interrupted you again. Sorry about that.
That's no worries. As you already mentioned, Yakutia is a kind of country of lakes. There is millions of lakes. The ground is water saturated in most cases and most of the year. And if you have wetlands, water saturated bodies, and you have lakes, and if you have organic matter there, you know what's the organic matter is converted to? It's converted into methane. So in any anaerobic conditions, methane is produced. And methane is an extremely strong greenhouse gas. It's something like 20, 30 times stronger greenhouse gas than CO2. And it's forming in the wetlands. And the reason why our region, which is actually extremely dry, we don't have much precipitation in our region. But the reason why we have such a moist environment is because all the vegetation is very low productive. And if it's low productive, it doesn't evapotranspirate. With photosynthesis, it doesn't evaporate water. And if you have grasses and herbs, they dry out the soil much faster. And in these conditions, the ground is much, much drier. So you have less wetlands, less moist environment, probably shallower lakes and smaller lakes, I would think, as well. If you have a kind of big scale ecosystem and work in full strength. And at that, you have much less methane. So when all the wetlands is the main source of greenhouse gases globally. We'll have some methane coming from animals, because ruminants are known as a big source of methane. But let's say on the pasture, the animals will emit, let's say, about 25% of the methane, which would be otherwise emitted from the wetland on the same territory.
You were saying that predators needed to be introduced back into the region. What predators would you like to see?
Well, there is some predator in the region anyway, so there are wolves as the main predator, but they're very rare and they are not present in the park. I think at some point when we'll have already established populations of the herbivores, we need to introduce predators. And right now, our population of animals is still small, so we have 20 animals of this kind, 20 animals of this kind. Most of these animals are having their first, second, third, fourth winter in the Arctic, and they're not yet adapted. They don't have this population which has been living in the Arctic for several years, and I don't think the number is enough to have predators. But once we will increase the number of herbivores, we need predators. And first of all, it's wolves, and I think it's the easiest one to get. And I think theoretically we might have getting wolves even without our desire for that. So they might find a way in the park, and they will see many animals, and they would want to hang out there. Secondly, in the wild ecosystem, there would always must be a big cat. And in the Pleistocene, we had this, I think it was called something like cave lion, but I was talking with one geneticist from California, and she said, Beth Shapiro, and she said that there was a study on the genome of these cave lions, and scientists kind of read the genome and saw that this genome is 100% identical to the genome of African lion. So what we had back in the Arctic was actually African lion, and we call it African just because these animals survived, and the ecosystem where these animals can live survived only in the Africa. And but back in the time, these grazing ecosystems were everywhere, and lions could find them enough food everywhere. And they don't care about cold as much as people would think. They care about place where they can have enough forage. Another candidate would be Amur tiger. Amur tiger are located now in the south of Russia, near Vladivostok, near China border, and the population of these animals is extremely under danger. And the same reason that they don't have a good ecosystem to live on. They cannot find enough prey. So the reindeers are sparse, and I know that the boars, which been like 60% of their diet, in the last few years, the population dropped like 30 times because of this, I think African swine flu. And that's what kind of big disaster for them. And if you have an ecosystem where there is enough forage for tigers, I think it will be happy to live there, even though it's above the Arctic Circle.
That's very exciting. Amazing. Would you tell the listeners what other animals are on the farm? And if you do have a favorite animal or even plant from the region, could you tell us about that?
Well, what we introduced so far are what we had. So we have Yakutian horses, reindeer, moose. That's like the most local animals you could find. Then we have yaks. We have European bison and bison. We have some Kalmykian cows. We have some goats, a little bit of sheep. So we try with all those domestic. Well, we try to find the most wild versions of these animals, but still many of them are domestic. But in our case, if the animals are doing the good job in terms of promoting the grass growth, that's good for us. Then we have American bison, plain bison, so already 2 herds. What else? And this year we brought a group of camels early in the spring, and they're actually extremely awesome. I wasn't really sure that it was a good call, but there was many scientists and many people who say that that might be a good idea. And it's a Bactrian camel which live originally in Mongolia, and they are actually very cold adapted, and they seem to be extremely cool. So we actually like them very much, and they arrived just this June, but they're really awesome. They're very friendly, unlike many other animals, which most of other animals in the park could never would approach a human. those camels are really like to come close and hang out with people, and they're really, really cool. They just they have a very nice fur, and they friendly and beautiful. So I am sure that camels are the top one favorite now in the park.
Oh, how lovely, how lovely. Have you had any spiritual or profound moments within the park or within the region that you'd like to tell us about?
I don't know. It's overall, it's a very tough job and tough project. So no one has ever created an ecosystem in the past, and that's a kind of big challenge. And there is clearly not enough knowledge how to do that. And what we are doing is extremely complicated. So any transportation of animals takes tens of days. Like this bison, the record longest they were in the transport for 50 days. Camels took us 35 days to arrive, and that's all extremely, extremely complicated and expensive. And
yeah, I'd love everybody to look on Google Maps to see the park, exactly where it is, because you have to literally zoom out as far as Google can go to find where you were collecting the bison from. So the park, the park is very, very northwest, and you were over. I thought you were there now, but obviously it was an email from before. Is way west. Such a long journey.
Yes. So overall, kind of, I don't know what if spiritual, but that's a really kind of hard task, and for us, it's probably kind of project of life, definitely for me, and I would take as a personal say quest for me to create self-sustainable grazing ecosystem in the Arctic. Maybe it will not be under my lifetime big enough to influence climate, but I hope that eventually the product which we'll create will be able to grow to those scales. And so I think that's kind of pretty much the mission. So
yeah, I can see that the purpose is very close to your heart, and it is a quest. And you could say that it is a spiritual quest because you're doing this for mankind. So thank you.
Yes, thanks for kind words.
Yeah, no, we thank you for your work. What can people do to help support you? You're supporting nature. I normally ask what can people do to support nature, but I'd like to say what can anybody do to support your project?
Well, of course, since we are self-funded and all the expeditions and all the animals and just the maintenance of the park take money, so we are often lacking resources, and it's possible if someone wants to support us, they can either subscribe to our Patreon campaign, or we have non-profit foundations in US and in European Union. So both are the options, and you can find it on our website. So any support by that is helpful. Also, we are, as I said, no one has ever done the restoration of ecosystems before. And that's a kind of task which is still unknown. And there is many scientific questions which needs to be answered in terms of animals, how the ecosystem functions, how biochemical cycles function, what about the nutrients. Maybe we need some special insects. For example, we need dung beetles. That's kind of we need good soils. We need to restore soils, and we need to know how exactly it was functioning in the past. We just know that, what we know is that ecosystems, productive ecosystems, existed in the Arctic and existed for millions of years. So we are not inventing a bike. We know this bike existed. We just don't know exactly how it functions. And our job is to learn how to function that. And here we would really like to kind of invite scientists to come and do kind of independent research in the park and help us in understanding kind of how we should proceed, what we are doing wrong, etc., etc.
Okay, so I'd like to encourage expertise for the projects, and anybody that's listening now that has a particular, we might put in the show notes areas of expertise you're interested in, and obviously we'll put the links to the website and everything, so that if anybody's listening, they can find
I think people, if person will know what our project is about, and they are experts some related field, they can think of themselves if they can be of any help. I think that's understandable for the.
I do have a question about books that you like to recommend. Do you want to recommend any books to people? Is there any book about the park and about the project and the story?
I don't think there is like a whole book about the park, at least yet. There is, famous books like Drawdown, or there is now been recently published that is something like 39 ways to save the planet. I think Park is mentioning, and those books I think are quite crucial because what we are doing, the climate change is really a big issue, and I am kind of certain on that. And I think it's a global issue, and it's kind of issue which started to appear 3 centuries ago. And there is no easy solution to this problem. The problem is too complex to be there is no silver bullet. And Park is one of the solutions. It will help here or there, and maybe if we are super successful, I think maybe Park can solve. If I'm like in ideal world, maybe we can solve, let's say, 20% of the global warming problem. That's kind of the maximum I would estimate. But other 80% have to be solved in some other ways. So I would think that literature, which is kind of investigating and how to do that and teaching people how to do that, are quite important. I'm not an expert in books. I'm an expert in how transport animals in the Arctic, how to make sure they survive, and how to manage the research station in the Arctic. Kind of ask me those questions.
Well, I would love to ask you actually, what is your tip for transporting animals in the Arctic? Is what you suggest? Not that many people will have to do that, but it's so interesting.
Well, it's actually not that complicated. You just need to do that. It's once you get a truck, you get a proper container, you fix it, you get enough forage, food. For animals to survive in a long trip, they need to have good conditions. They need to be in dry, clean place with enough water and forage. Let's say, make sure that's guaranteed, and the rest is just about time and money.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd love it if you did a little video of the next big transportation that you were doing. I think that'd be really fun for people to watch. Well, they obviously see the difficulty of it as well, which everybody loves watching people struggle. And then the exciting things, like recently they just dug up a wolf's head in the permafrost. I'm not sure if you saw that on the news. And of course, what everybody wants to hear about is digging up mammoths and cloning mammoths, and we're going to get them back into the Arctic. And have you anything to tell us about that and projects like that?
Well, yes, there's been a huge news recently that George Church from Harvard combined with, I think, the guy, investor Ben Lam, and they started a project company named Colossal, and they stated that they have $15 million to create a mammoth in 6 years from now. I think it's now 6 years, and it's been extremely big news. So it's been in every New York Times, Guardian, and many others. And since George and Ben said that the first mammoths will go to the Pleistocene Park, you could guess that I also got a big piece of media attention in the last month. And it will be so fun to see that. I'm not sure it will happen anytime soon. So, in ideal world, we will make mammoths in 6 years. After that, I'm not taking a 1-year-old mammoth to the park. It's still a tiny baby.
Yeah.
So mammoths are not like mouse or even horses or bison. They take many years to grow. So we need to introduce to the park, we need at least several species, and they need to be at least teenagers. So that's not going to happen for a while. In any case, there've been actually many skepticism about the project and saying that, it's kind of playing God, or the money should be better used for conservation. And it's actually, I think those statements are quite ridiculous because, I think those money were taken out of Bitcoin market, which is, I think, trillions of dollars. And Bitcoin it's a pure evil, which in my vision should die instantly, and all the money should be taken somewhere else. So if at least millions of dollars would be taken into science, it's already will be good. Secondly, George Church, he's a brilliant and very successful geneticist. And what he's doing is not only about mammoths, it's not only about cloning, it's really about pushing the science forward. And what Colosso is aiming to do, this kind of cloning the mammoths, for that, they will have to solve numerous scientific and engineering, very complicated problems. And if they will solve them, those kind of solutions will be used in any parts of the kind of human activities. And that will be beneficial. So I personally would love to have mammoths in the park. That would make our ecosystem better. So let's say, from my personal point of view, I am of course biased. I want mammoths. It will be great from every perspective.
I'm imagining you. I'm imagining you there saying, "Oh no, one of the mammoths has got a sore leg." Do you have a crush for the bison? Do you put them into a metal crush to treat them, or do you just corral them and catch them?
Ideally, we want animals to be on their own. We provide them with extra forage, but there is not that much activities we do with the bison. Secondly, to keep the bison in, you need very, very serious fencing and this chute, and that's something that's pretty much out of budget for our.
But I'm just imagining all the things you'll need for the mammoths, and then when they come, you might say, "We thought they were going to be very wild, but they're incredibly friendly." They're just coming over and saying hello all the time.
I would be happy to have friendly mammoths, of course. In any case, let's say if the mammoths will be showing up, of course we'll have a kind of proper conditions for them. And also, mammoths don't need a tall fence. Let's say I don't think the mammoths can jump over a 1 meter tall fence. That's already too much for them. So it needs to be like very, very kind of solid fence, that's for sure. But it should not be entirely like tall. That's it's solvable. So that's kind of, all you need is money. If we would be really getting the first mammoth, come on, like we would find $1 million to make a proper fence for that. I'm sure.
Yeah, and the whole world would be looking at you saying, "What? They've got a mammoth in their park."
Anyway, that would be cool. Let's say just kind of any skepticism aside, if they would succeed, that would be cool in any case.
Yeah. So I don't want to keep you so long, but the last question, and I think I might know what your answer is if you had a magic wand, what would you like to do for the planet right now?
I would want humans to learn how to live sustainably on this planet. So the park and what we're doing is kind of one of the attempts. It's not about even the climate change. It's how to use resources, renewable resources of the planet to make good living out of it. And it's even some sort of philosophy. It's a study, it's philosophy, it's maybe even a religion, let's say, which needs to be how to live on our planet sustainably and in harmony with nature and with other living creatures. Because so far, let's say, I think the best term for humans would be the cancer. So we are acting as a cancer on our planet. We are growing extremely rapidly. We're taking our resources and we're destroying the nature and the climate, the nature, the living beings all over the world. And doing that, if something have a cancer, it dies. So for us, it's, I think, extremely critical right now to learn how to live sustainably, how to stop being a cancer. And that's kind of the main issue. So we need to change perception. We need probably to change our nature to some bit. But, we either do that or we go extinct. So that's kind of the main issue, I would say.
Well, it needs to be said, and thank you for being so inspiring with that message. And I was so excited about the talk, and it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll put all the links and everything in the show notes. And we wish you all the best with your work. And if you ever happen to come to Ireland, we don't have any bison. Well, I think there might be a few in some of the zoos, but I don't have any for sale. But if you do come to Ireland, come and look us up, and we'd love to talk to you more.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I think actually Dublin seems like a lovely place to visit, especially for people who like to drink.
Okay, good. We might see you then. Thank you so much, Nikita. It was great to talk to you. It was very difficult to get you because obviously you had to come onto the mainland to get the good Wi-Fi connection. You don't have a strong Wi-Fi at the station?
I think we would be able to have a voice recording. Maybe it wouldn't be great, but we wouldn't have a video.
Okay, well, thank you so much and hope to talk to you again.
Sure, yes. Thanks for the invitation and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Nature Magic. I recommend everyone to check out the Pleistocene Park website and to search it on Google Maps to see exactly how remote it is. Please subscribe to the show, it's free, and if you like it, please write a review to help spread a positive voice for nature. We got a lovely review this week titled Excellent and Refreshing. Really interesting guests from a wide range of backgrounds with different entry points to the very broad topic of nature. Interviewer does a great job, thank you, of allowing guests space to answer with insightful questions. We'd like to thank Professor Martin Bunzel for sponsoring this episode. Find his new book, Thinking While Walking, on Amazon.